Hello and welcome to Run the Business, the weekly podcast that explores the place where running and leadership come together. We'll find out what running can teach us about leading, managing people, and generally being better in business. We'll also try and answer that question, do runners make better leaders? I'm Anthony Gay, and today our guest is me. Hang on, producer Anna, is that right?
Yeah. That's right.
Well, it's kind of like a bonus episode, isn't it? Now, I'm going to hand over to you, my Run the Business production partner, Anna Harding. You thought it'd be a good idea to get into my background a little bit and dig into some of the reasons why we've done the podcast and where I'm coming from in my passion for running a business. But I thought I can't do this properly without introducing you first. So, Anna, you have done so much. I mean this completely sincerely. You've done so much to take running to new and interesting places, to introduce it to people, encourage people to get involved via your work on the running channel. You've also taken on some wacky challenges since things on the running channel got going a few years back. You're one of the lead presenters there. You've done and you can correct me if any of this is wrong, but you've done the London, Berlin, New York, and Boston marathons. Mm-hmm. You ran for 24 hours recently, which was just crazy. And the video that went with that was like, I just could not stop watching it. And the big one, during lockdown, you ran a marathon in your back garden.
It wasn't a very big back garden either, Anthony.
It wasn't, was it? Anna Harding, welcome to Run the Business.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Anthony. Yeah, I just thought we would mix things up for this episode so that we'd, learn a bit more about the voice behind Run the Business, which is your voice.
Okay.
And, you're a CEO and you love running. And it was you who wanted to explore this link further by making this podcast. So let's let the listeners behind the curtain, as it were, and find out a little bit more about you.
Okay. All right. Will you be gentle?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do a little introduction for you.
Okay.
So our host, Anthony, our guest today, is someone who spent his career working in the medium of audio, funnily enough, with 30 years of experience in audio branding and production and creative radio programming, music scheduling and talent management. You work closely with market-leading radio stations around the world on their on-air brand positioning and imaging, and have built strong teams who deliver award-winning content. In fact, it never seems like a month goes by where you're not winning an award. So, Anthony Gay, welcome to Run the Business.
Thank you. I enjoyed that intro. Thank you so much.
So, Anthony, first off, as you start with all guests, how are you today?
I'm feeling good. The weather helps, doesn't it? I mean, I'm certainly a summer and a sunshine person. So when the sun's out and the sky is blue, it lifts my mood. So I'm feeling great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm also very well, thank you. Very smiley and enjoying the sunshine. And have you been running today, or when was the last time you went running?
I've not been out today. I'm kind of having a little bit of a rest to start the week. I was out on the weekend. I did park run, my local Wilmslow park run on Saturday morning, and then I did junior park run with my daughter on Sunday morning because she wasn't kind of feeling it, and she said, "Well, you come and do it with me." So I kind of gave her some encouragement and a bit of pacing on park run, and that was on Sunday morning. So that was they were my last two runs.
Fabulous. And when did you get into running?
I think it's been there ever since I was a kid, really. I mean, I do vividly remember those cross country runs at school, which I think we all kind of have those memories of those experiences running. For me, it was running across farmers' fields in absolute cold, frosty conditions, wearing tiny little shorts and a PE kit, and off down across the fields through the woods. And it was, yeah, it wasn't, I suppose it wasn't nice on one hand, but I can remember it because it was so invigorating. Even at that age, the idea of sort of being out there with the elements and running across these fields, I liked it, and it just sort of drew me in, and I kind of did cross country runs and things like that at school. I remember during the summer holidays, actually, my mates and I set up a little run around the place where we lived in Sheffield. And it's about 2.5 miles, but I think there's about 10 of us that did it. But we set it up as a race and had a start and finish and chalked the line out, and there was a route that everybody had to do. And we even set up, got some mum and dad to do a drink station halfway round because it was in the summer holidays. So we thought, if we're going running, there has to be a refreshment point. So they were sort of on their driveway with some sugary drink to help us carry on and get round. Those are the kind of early memories of running.
It sounds like it's really been ingrained in you from such a young age, though, and and you've carried it on. I'm not going to give away your age here, but I know that there is a certain milestone coming up.
Oh yes,
and you've continued with your running throughout your life.
Yeah, and I think it means different things to people as they get older, as they sort of change, and I think this is common for everybody. You start, and there is this sense of just wanting to go fast and long and quick and beat people. And I see the kids on park run. It's brilliant seeing the junior park run where they just shoot off like rockets. And there's a bridge on our park run, and it's about 100 meters sort of from the start line, and you can see the kids reach the bridge, and then they'll go, "This is a bit," and then they start slowing down. And then they're walking after a bit. But yeah, that sense of, as you get older, you start to appreciate the different sides to running and the space that it gives you and the mental perspective that you can get from it and all the other benefits. And I suppose that's where, particularly in the last few years, I started to sort of equate some of those benefits into business and start to draw some parallels there.
Absolutely. And this podcast is what running can teach us about business in general, and a link that you've been so interested in learning more about that you started the podcast. And so do you find that those parallels between, shooting off and having loads of energy at the start and then maybe, being a bit more considered in your approach to pacing can perhaps relate into your line of work and your business life?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think, as you say, this podcast came from. And this is a bit of a work in progress, I'll be honest. And I started with almost 3 different sort of spaces of the benefits. The physical benefits. You go running first thing in the morning and you get extra energy that can kind of help you get through the day. And it can help with your endurance for having long days or traveling or things like that. So there's the physical benefits. The psychological sort of benefits of running, which we all know about, the stress that it can lift from us and helps us be sharper and more aware of what's going on around us. I mean, there's lots of studies and things that have been done around how running can help depression and anxiety and things like that. And then the third sort of area is what I call parallel benefits. And these are the comparisons between business and running. Some of them are the cliches, and I think the obvious one is it's a marathon, not a sprint, and that kind of stuff, which, there is sense and there is, logic behind that. And as I kind of started to dig into those, I think there's more in that space, in those parallels between how you approach running and business that can really help us. Goal setting is an obvious one. For anybody who goes out running, the idea of, even if it's a training run, you ask yourself, what's the objective of what I want to get out of this run? What do I want to take from this run? And it might be time, it might be distance, but it might be, just some space, some mindfulness. It might be, not walking. It might be coming up with an idea that you or solving a problem that you might have. So I think in the same way that when you set out running, you have those objectives clear. The same applies to business. Nobody starts a business without having an objective or a purpose of what they want to achieve. And that's an obvious one. But I think as we've dug deeper into those parallels through the podcast, there's more stuff in there that I think is really interesting.
And for you, are there any specific examples where running's given you a lesson in something that you've then transferred into your work?
I think the pacing thing you mentioned before is a big thing about just taking your time and being able to see that there's a long game here and you can't achieve everything in a day, in a week, and having those objectives that exist for the day, the week, the month, 3 months, and just kind of working that out. I mean, specific things from running. I mean, we do a lot of stuff with music and melodies and sound. And I'm not a musician, but I do sort of, take part in the creative processes that we have. And it is sometimes strange where we have a challenge that we're trying to deliver on a new sonic identity or a new sound for somebody. And halfway through a run, a little melodic sequence will sort of pop in my head and go, oh, that's interesting. How could that, how might that fit this project? So there are definitely examples where I've come back from a run and had a little melody, a little earworm in my head, which I've been able to take into a conversation or a meeting that has added to a project that we've been working on.
That's so interesting. And actually, on the subject of music, then, do you run listening to music or no music, or is it a mix of both?
I generally don't listen to music. I think I work with sound and music and jingles and audio. So for me, running is the space, the mindfulness and perspective that we can get. I kind of like to clear my head of everything. And sometimes those early morning runs are just about the sounds of, and it sounds a bit cliche, but, the birds and the sheep in the fields and that kind of stuff. And those sounds are, natural sounds, which I think are just so helpful in lifting your mood and setting you up for the day. So generally, I don't even have a pair of buds or anything like that. So no, not a music runner.
That's really surprising considering the background of your work. Let's talk a little bit more about the business side of things and how you got into what you do today.
So my love of radio started very, very early on, at probably a similar time to when I was doing those runs around in the summer holidays. When I was 11, I saw an advert in the local newspaper. It had a kids section and it was advertising for presenters for a new radio station that was opening in Sheffield for the Children's Hospital. So they were looking for kids to run a radio station for kids. And I thought, it sounds like a good idea. I quite like, I like music. And I made a tape, as it was then, sent it in and ended up getting a job on, it was called Radio Crystal. And it was at the Children's Hospital in Sheffield. And I was the first presenter to do a show on the opening day of Radio Crystal. And it's kind of just gone on from there. So I kind of worked at my local commercial radio station in Sheffield, which was Radio Hallam FM. And I was in Birmingham at university. So I worked at a radio station there that was called BR&B at the time and was producing and presenting there and just loved it and loved working with sound and music and creativity. It didn't feel like a job. It didn't feel like work when you were kind of in these, radio stations doing all this fun stuff. And it's just grown from there. And I kind of, ultimately went back to Sheffield and was presenting there and then got more into the management side of things. And I think that's where the business side began. I felt that I loved presenting, but I kind of felt like I'd reached a point where I wanted to do more and wanted to be more involved in the direction and the strategy of where things were going. So that's where I guess the management and the leadership side of things came in.
And now you are CEO. You've got your own team, your award-winning team. And, how have you developed your leadership skills in a way that has, taken you to where you are now?
It's a big question, and I think leadership skills, we're all learning and honing our skills every single day. And, I am still working on those skills. And I think back to, the first time I got a title of a manager or director in your job and think, actually, was I up for it then? Was I the person then that was the finished article? Absolutely not. And even now, I don't think that's the case. So we're all on this journey and all learning. And I think one of the things that sticks out is just making sure you have great people around you and letting those people do what they do and getting out the way of them in achieving, what they need to do. I think probably early on, I had quite a fixed way of doing things and maybe could only see a single route to success. And I think one thing I've learned over the years is there are so many different ways to approach it, and different people bring different skills and different ways to attack a problem. And that's something I think one of the big lessons is there are so many different routes to success. And when you do get great people and you're working with great people, listen to the things that they have to say and the direction that they want to go in and how they attack a problem, because it might actually be, and usually is, better than the way that you might have originally thought.
And that team that you have, you're split across the UK and the US. Does your job involve a lot of travel because of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair bit of traveling. Obviously, the last few years has affected that, and we've all embraced even more video calls and that kind of stuff. We did a lot of that anyway, because I work with my sort of extended team is in Seattle in the US. I work with people in Florida, in Chicago, in Dublin, Vienna, in the Netherlands, in France, even Melbourne. So yeah, we're not going to be getting together all the time. So we do a lot of, and we even before COVID, we did a lot of video calls and caught up virtually. So it's always been something that's kind of been ingrained in our company culture. So it wasn't too tough to sort of transition into that when things changed. So I do travel. I try and probably travel less these days than I did. As you know, conferences and things like that have evolved and changed a little bit, and there's certainly less need to be, I think, face to face as much with clients and partners. Although it is fantastic, and I know you'll appreciate this when you are in the same room as somebody, just the dynamic is slightly different, and some of the conversations and ideas and energy around the edges is the stuff where the creativity and the ideas come from. So it's tough to sort of force that on a video call.
Absolutely. And I guess, if you're getting the opportunity to travel to all these different places as well, it means you've got an opportunity to go and run and explore in those places. That's something you enjoy doing.
Yeah. And it's such I feel so privileged that when we do end up at a conference or in a meeting somewhere else, that idea of being able to get up in the morning, stick the shoes on and go for a run and set the day up. That's usually I'm a sort of morning runner in the main. So, getting out there when I go to our HQ in Seattle, I sort of get a Airbnb or a place to stay near the office, which just sets me up great because I can kind of head out early in the morning. Obviously, with the time difference of flying, you're kind of up earlier anyway, and just do a big run down by the waterfront and see the city come to life. It is, so wonderful that I think only people that run can experience or share that experience of being in a foreign place, being in a new place, and being there early in the morning as the sun's coming up, and you're just sort of running along, just soaking it all up and getting your head in the right space for the day ahead. So running, along the Seattle waterfront early in the morning is something I always enjoy when I'm over there in the US.
You've painted a beautiful picture there. I wonder if there's a run near you where you live that you enjoy doing on a regular basis that's as spectacular as the Seattle waterfront.
Yeah, probably not as spectacular, but I'm fortunate to live in a part of the world where there's some great sort of trail runs and country runs. So there's a place called Quarrybank Mill near me, which recently hosted a trail run, which a couple of weeks back, which I took part in, which was fantastic. And that run takes you through around Stile Mill and some of the history and the heritage of Manchester in the Northwest. Really well organised. The team behind it, Run Northwest, do a great job, and it's really well attended. So that's a great run. I mean, my sort of regular 10K involves sort of being around that part of the world, but also down by Manchester Airport. There's a path that runs along the side there, which is part of my sort of usual 10K run. And if you time it right, you can get a bit where you kind of competing against planes taking off, which is always a great experience for a runner. You can kind of see how far you can get ahead before the plane overtakes you. So that's sort of my regular run around home. I do love the Lake District in England as well. So as a family, we spend as much time up there as we can. And the runs around there are just mind-blowing. Flat or fell running is just amazing. To be up around Langdale Valley and the tarns and the places around there is great.
It's absolutely beautiful there. And I think you may have alluded to this already, but do you run mainly on your own or do you run in groups?
I tend to run most of the time on my own, just because of, I guess, logistics of sort of where I am and who I'm with. Certainly from home, just getting out in the morning before everybody else is up and going out. So it's usually on my own. There's a few runners locally that I'll do bits with here and there, but because we're all on sort of slightly different time scales of work and life, it's hard to sort of find points where it all marries up. That said, things like park run, if that counts, the park run that I've got, which is, I'm very fortunate to be less than, I think it's 800 meters away from the start of the park run near me, which is great. You can kind of roll out of bed on a Saturday morning and know that there is a bunch of people that are going to run with you at 9 o'clock that morning is fantastic.
And with your running and your work, do you ever recommend running either to your clients or your colleagues? How do they feel about your passion for running? Do they share it with you?
Yeah, there's a few of us at work actually that do it in the office, where our office is at Media City at Salford near Manchester, and there's some nice runs around the docks and Salford Quays that we kind of do at lunchtime. So there's a couple of us that would get out and do stuff, and we have some good running chat in the office. In terms of the wider team, there's a few runners in there, and to be honest, I try not to sort of force it on people, but I do enjoy, as I know you do, just enthusing about it. And I think you either catch people with that enthusiasm and they get intrigued and they want to know more, or some people it's like, whoa, no, it's not for me. And I'll probably stop talking about it then, because as runners know, we can sometimes get too enthusiastic and talk about it too much.
Well, I suppose I may have shared that with you a few times, yes. And I mean, with your running, you have done some incredible runs, and you've got a big goal coming up, the Ring of Fire. Tell us about what that challenge is, but also what motivates you and drives you to tackle such big things like that race.
I think it's the running thing where people start off and you get the bug and you do the 5K and then you do the 10K, and then it's the 10K leads to the half marathon, and then it leads to the marathon. And I saw a little a little cartoon the other day of which made me laugh, and it was Yoda. It was sort of, half marathon leads to marathon leads to ultra leads to suffering. And I thought, yeah, that's it. I think you get to a point where you want to test yourself and just get a sense of where the edges are of being alive. And the bigger distances and the bigger challenges are an amazing way to do that, to push yourself further. I kind of have done a few longer runs, sort of fell runs in the lakes. I did a 60K, and then there was an 80K in Lancashire, and then that sort of went into a 100K in Derbyshire that we did. So I've kind of sort of built up, and then the Ring of Fire came along, and I thought I wanted to do something multi-day and just see how the body kind of coped with running consecutive days, and how I would handle that, and what my approach to that would be. So the Ring of Fire is a coastal ultra around Anglesey, which is North Wales. It's an island as part of North Wales, and you start off in a place called Holyhead and basically run around the entire island with the sea on your left-hand side, I think. Yeah. And you run back to Holyhead, and it's 135 miles. I think it's about 4,000 meters of elevation, which sounds a lot. I think it's quite undulating. There's a couple of points where it's steep, but generally it's just that sort of up and down, which can be challenging in itself. And it just sounds an amazing challenge. And then the 2 nights you end up at places. I think there's a leisure centre for one of the nights, and then a church hall for the next night, where you can kind of camp down and spend a few hours sleeping, hopefully. So it's not just the running; it's the approach and how you prepare for that, and things like kit and maybe a little bit of orienteering to get to the right places. I don't know what it's going to be like because I've not done anything at that level before, but it sounds like an amazing run. The idea of listening to the song Ring of Fire just before you start is a bit wacky, and I think that is going to be a moment to look forward to. We talked about what motivates you when you go running and having a purpose. This one, a really good friend of mine, very sadly lost his brother earlier this year after an operation, and I kind of wanted to do something to remember Mike and do something for Matt and his family. So I'm running to raise some money for Mike and hopefully support a little support for his family, as well as that to remember Mike, because Mike was a runner and he was also a big fan of Formula One, which I love, and we did a Silverstone half marathon many years ago. I did with his brother Matt, which was great fun and a very memorable day. So as a Formula One fan, to run around an F1 track was pretty amazing. But Mike will be in my thoughts, and he'll be somebody that I'll be wanting to remember and pay some respects to in September as well.
What a fantastic cause and reason for you to push yourself to your limits, I suppose. And I wonder if there is any time in your business career where you have taken a deep dive and gone, right, I'm going to go for this goal. It's big and it's scary and it's going to take a lot to get there, but I'm going to focus on this. Is there any time in your business life where that's happened?
I think I've always been, I'm a very positive person, and I always see the glasses half full and look for the best in situations. So rightly or wrongly, I kind of have a anything is possible attitude to business and running, as well. So it's a good question. And I think I always look at the goals that we are setting for a particular year, or the objectives, the things that we want to achieve. And if I think they are genuinely achievable, then I'll pour myself into them and hopefully take the people around me with me on that journey. Because I think one of the things about running, and I was chatting to one of the guests on Run the Business the other day, who was just talking about how runners can inspire people to go the extra mile. Again, a cliche, but the idea of expectations and what's possible. He was talking about his own experience where he'd run 11 marathons across a number of months, and people were like, oh, that's amazing. And then he mentioned a runner who'd run 200 marathons in 200 days. And then people go, oh my God. And suddenly the expectations shift. And then they're kind of like, well, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing more than 11? 11 seems small. So when you kind of look at goals like that and objectives, it can sort of shift people's perspectives around what's possible. And I think running is a great example of that, where, as you know, there are some superheroes in the space of running that are just inspiring in what they do. It's not just about speed. It's about the challenges they take on and how they find these unique challenges of running up hills in different parts of the world, or running consecutive days, and I think those inspiring stories are amazing for both running but for business as well, because it shows people that things are possible that maybe we wouldn't have thought were possible.
Absolutely. And I think they also inspire us to do the next wacky thing, don't they?
The next wacky thing. I don't know, you've got some wacky things coming up in the next few months as well.
Always got wacky things on. So a few more questions for you, Anthony. Running aside, can you name one business tool, app, person or thing that you can't do without?
That's a good question. From a business point of view, the thing, and I think this may have been mentioned on other episodes. Basecamp is the tool that we use across our businesses as a means of tracking projects, and it's a project management tool. But also the way we can communicate updates and share links to Google Docs and Dropbox folders with audio in and stuff like that. So I would say Basecamp as a central sort of hub for tracking projects. I don't know what we would do without it. And there's bits that sort of feed into it, as I mentioned, other platforms and other things. But as a central way of tracking projects, I think Basecamp. And I think we're on, what is it, Basecamp 3 or something now, but it's great. So I would recommend anybody that is maybe looking to find a project management tool, check out Basecamp.
Fabulous tip. And then business aside, what is your favourite bit of running kit or accessory that you can't do without?
I've got to say my watch. I'm a Garmin person, and the watch and the metrics and the data that I can get from it really, really help. And I know it's not all about the data, and I know it's not all about the numbers, but it does help me just get that overall sense of where I'm at in my training journey and measuring particular runs and things like that. So I would have to say that the watch and the way, the level of detail and information there is, I know it's gone through the roof in the last few years, and I do appreciate that you can get too hung up on it. My wife has a thing where when I wake up in the morning, I look at the watch and see what my body battery is, or see what my sleep score is, and she believes that my watch is the thing telling me how I think I've slept. And actually, she's probably right in that. So have I had a good night's sleep? Oh, let me look at my watch. Oh, my watch says yes, I've had a good night's sleep. So it can be, it can take over. But I genuinely think what watches have done for me have just helped put some edges around my training and give me some focus around the numbers and things. So that would be my answer there.
And are you quite a data-driven person in both running and in business?
Yeah, I think you have to be. And I do have dashboards for everything, for running and for business. So to be able to, when things get big and there's a lot of stuff going on, I think you need a dashboard. You need data. But the things I would say is make sure you're looking at the right numbers, because you can have too much data. You can have data that if you interpret every tiny little movement in each direction, you just get lost in the weeds, and that's not helpful. So having data that you are looking at, which gives you the right overview and not getting too granular. It's about trends, I think. And this is the same in running, isn't it? It's what's the direction of travel? Where are we going? What's the trend taking us? Rather than measuring every single run and analyzing that to death, because some days you just feel better than others, and taking that run in isolation, either one way or the other, is going to skew things. So I think it's looking at the week, the month, and the direction of travel. So I am data driven. I think data is really, really important, because you need that data to see where you are on that journey to achieving your goals. But don't get hung up in it too much.
Yeah, you mentioned the right data there. A really sneaky question for you. What is your favorite metric in running? So what's the favorite piece of data that your watch gives you?
Favorite? VO2 max. VO2 max is a weird thing, isn't it? Because I kind of, it sort of, at one point I was up, I won't say the numbers, but I was up at what I thought was a fairly high figure, and I've never been able to achieve that again since. And I actually think, I actually feel fitter at the moment than maybe I did then. So that's one that it is, and I know it's kind of about the different, times and distances, and it kind of brings it all together. I'd probably say on the watch that I have now, the screen, when I look at is the body battery. I know it's not really a running metric, but I kind of, it does give me that sense of where I'm at. Have I slept well? Do I need to, have I got energy to exercise? I won't always listen to it, but the idea of your body battery score, I think is, again, it overall is good. I've got a 68 as we're speaking, which I think is not bad. That says I can go out and do some running this afternoon, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good position to be in at this time of day. And then finally, what advice would you give to anyone in business or a leadership role who is considering getting more active and specifically maybe dabbling in a bit of running?
I'd say listen to a podcast called Run the Business and check out all the episodes, because and I'm joking, but at the same time, the guests that you've managed to assemble are fantastic. And going, interviewing and chatting to these people from all over the world and all sorts of backgrounds is amazing. It's inspiring. I feel like I'm getting leadership coaching for free from having these conversations with great entrepreneurs and CEOs. So I am joking, but the conversations are amazing. So do check them out. I mean, in terms of the advice, and we touched upon this at the start, I think there are multiple things that running can bring to your life: physical, psychological, and these parallel benefits to business. And I think we can all take different elements from those three things that will help us raise our game. And running is not something you need to be amazing at, and something I think you do in terms of encouraging people really well is just to get out there and try it. Running, walking is something which I know a lot of people do, and it's great because it just gets you out and starts you on that journey. And the benefits that you'll see in terms of just the extra energy that you'll have to tackle some of life's problems, and the perspective that you'll have from doing just a short distance of running can really have a big impact on your life. So don't feel like you've got to be a marathon runner, a half marathon runner, or even doing a 5K. Just getting out there. Somebody I was talking to the other day said it can be, you don't even need the gear. If you're in your business suit or you're in the office, sometimes just going out the office, running up and down the street gently and coming back in could be the world of difference to help you get into that next meeting or that call or something in a better frame of mind. So give it a try.
Thank you so much for that, Anthony. That's been a wonderful conversation. And as with every episode of Run the Business that I've edited so far, it's just inspired me to want to just go out and run. So thank you for your time. I'm off for a run.
Well, I want to say thank you to you as well for being part of this, because I may be the host, the voice on Run the Business, but I really appreciate everything you're bringing to it as well in helping find the guests and shape the sound of the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.